Ancient peoples, since the dawn of time, have communicated through the use of symbols, colors, numbers, geometry, dance, and music. They were able to communicate very abstract philosophical concepts through these mediums. These are the kinds of things that our right brain hemispheres recognize readily, and they speak to us the same as words do. Our subconscious minds take in this kind of communication all day long, even though our conscious minds are not aware of it. This is how subliminal programming works. But we are not trained to recognize this kind of communication. Why is this? The problem is, in our society, especially in the institutions of learning that we call school, no real emphasis is placed upon teaching students to develop right brain hemisphere thinking. In order for that to occur, we would have to focus on developing both hemispheres of the brain, and we would have to emphasize subjects such as art, music, dance, and what author Michael Tazarian calls symbol literacy. As a teacher in the school system for many years, I was a witness to how, for most years of their education, students are focused primarily upon development and use of the left brain, and by that I mean the focus is upon reading, writing, math, and, well, what passes for science. Why? Because this is what students will be tested on when they have to take the all-important test that will decide whether or not they will be admitted to college or which college they will be admitted to. And the focus is on this from the time students enter high school all the way up until the time when they leave. And on these tests, students are never asked to think creatively. They are asked to regurgitate knowledge. That so-called knowledge, of course, that has been given to them by the teacher or by a textbook, which is published by a foundation, which is connected to the powers that be in our invisible government, or the school board or the state, and all of these entities have designated what is appropriate for students to learn that they will need to learn to live a successful life. But when it comes to art, music, dance, drama, creative expression, next to nothing is done to develop these faculties. In fact, these are the programs that are most likely to be cut in schools in favor of more advanced placement courses, honors courses, foreign language, math courses, etc. And the end result of this is the creation of a student body that is devoid of the ability to create anything. They have no imaginations, no creativity, no passion for anything but the mind-numbing homework drills that they are subjected to. We are creating a society of robots. Even Einstein said, "The only thing that interferes with my learning is my education." Our focus on only the left brain hemisphere to the detriment of the right brain has produced in the masses of people an inability to discern that they are being led to conclusions that have been predetermined for them. They are incapable of creative, independent thought, and they are being primed, especially by the media and social media, to follow the crowd. In allowing this to happen, we have created a society that is ignorant about the significance of individuality, as stressed by the founders of this country when they wrote our Constitution. Instead, the young people of this country have been absorbed into a hive mind mentality that has been created for them. They are being groomed to believe and accept the notion that collectivism is the answer to society's problems. The crowd, as a collective entity, is teaching them that the state is everything, and they are willingly accepting the idea that the state knows what is best for them. Part of the indoctrination is the notion that in order to be good, virtuous people, we must dissolve our individuality and our selfhood into the collective. The crowd mentality is what the hypnotist calls a hypnagogic state. What is that? Hypnagogia is the transitional state of consciousness between wakefulness and sleep. During hypnagogia, it is common to experience involuntary and imagined experiences. These are referred to as hypnagogic hallucinations. These hallucinations can appear in the form of sights, sounds, or even feelings of movement. Neurons in our brain communicate with each other through bursts of electrical activity. This electrical activity can be measured in waves with a machine called an electroencephalogram, or an EEG. An EEG can measure 5 types of brain waves. From slowest to fastest, these waves are called delta waves, theta waves, alpha waves, beta waves, and gamma waves. When we are awake, our brains produce measurable alpha and beta waves, with beta waves being predominant. Once we become drowsy, alpha waves take over. Stage 1 is the lightest form of sleep and typically lasts for between 1 minute and 5 minutes. During this stage, alpha waves drop to less than 50% of total brain waves, and researchers can observe ripples of slower theta waves. Hypnagogia occurs during the transitional period of wakefulness to sleep, when alpha waves are decreasing, but the first stage of sleep has not yet been reached. During this period, the sense of here and now transitions from the real world to the dream world. During hypnagogia, we start to lose touch with reality as our bodies prepare to enter sleep. When this happens, we may experience hallucinations, lucid dreaming, body jerks, or even sleep paralysis. So how does the media benefit from creating this hypnagogic crowd mentality state? Well, because during this state, we are hypersuggestible. The logical, thinking, analytical part of the brain that hypnotists call the critical factor is hijacked during this state. Once a person enters the crowd mentality, individual thinking is submerged into the group. Adolf Hitler was schooled in occult practices as well as hypnotic techniques for brainwashing. And this is a topic for another video, but consider this remark made by the Führer himself. The power which has always started the greatest religions and political avalanches in history rolling has, from time immemorial, been the magic power of the spoken word. The broad masses of the people can only be moved by the power of speech. If I approach the masses with reasoned arguments, they will not understand me. In the mass meeting, their reasoning power is paralyzed. What I say is like an order given under hypnosis. Hitler also knew how to make use of hypnotic techniques such as gestures, cadences, and monosyllabic speech, or speech where one begins very slowly and then builds up to a climax. This is all about mass entrainment of the human brain. He was trained in these methods by a man by the name of Erik Jan Hanussen, who is described as a hypnotist, occultist, mentalist, and astrologer. Author Mel Gordon wrote a book about Hanussen in 2001 and described him as Hitler's Jewish clairvoyant. Yes, he was Jewish. He had a different name other than the name of Erik Jan Hanussen. Hitler's Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, said, "This is the secret of propaganda. Those who are to be persuaded by it should be completely immersed in the ideas of the propaganda without ever noticing that they are being immersed in it." How does the press make use of these techniques? Well, one of the first things a good hypnotist does is to get a subject to focus his or her attention on something. Without the focusing of attention, hypnosis can't take place. This is why some hypnotists have their subjects concentrate on the swinging of a pendulum, or the ticking of a metronome, or a spiral diagram. The press gets this same kind of focus by concentrating all of its attention on certain issues, those that fit the agenda of those who control the media, the power elite. Anything opposing this agenda is ignored or deleted. This serves to focus the attention of the masses of people instead of opening their minds and prompting them to ask questions, be curious, and think for themselves. Instead, they are presented with only certain information, thereby rendering them unable to form an accurate representation of reality. Unless, of course, people read and research and compare and analyze various sources, which we know they don't, because that would involve an investment of time and energy that, in their opinion, is better spent on something else. Perhaps shopping, sports, gossip, arguing about politics, or, should I say, the two-party tyranny. And I know for a fact that students in school are not taught how to do this because they are too busy memorizing and fighting over a tenth of a grade point to see who can get into the better college. Another hypnotic technique that is utilized by the press is repetition. Hypnotic repetition of the same viewpoints over and over again occurs week in and week out. The result is a kind of unconscious saturation of information, leading to overload and escape into hypnosis. This is brainwashing, plain and simple. People cannot reason for themselves, nor do they need to, because the press and the media do it for them. Of course, most people do not think they are under any kind of mind control such as I have just described. They believe that they understand what's going on in the world around them because, after all, they watch the news, don't they? Sadly, the intent of the news is to form, not to inform. If we want to be truly informed, we must become seekers of knowledge. This means we must open both hemispheres of our brain, both right and left. We must become symbol literate and become vigilant and guard against the brainwashing techniques that are being used as weapons against us. Only by seeing that there is a matrix can we form a desire to escape it, and then to take the steps necessary to extricate ourselves from it. To conclude, I'd like to quote one of my favorite philosophers, Vernon Howard. He said, "The man who does not know what it means to be under psychic hypnosis is probably already under it." Have a great day.